I don't take my Easy Complete quilt backs and put them in a hoop before embroidering them. I float them on top of sticky. Let me show you how I do it, because it's really a lot of fun and it's quick, and centering them becomes easier for me this way. This is a picture of the embroidery hoop as I prepare it in order to embellish each quilt back. I'm going to use the same sticky again and again for all the quilt backs, and so stay tuned to see how I do that. Right now, this is hooped with none of the paper removed. All of the paper is still against the sticky. This embroidery hoop came with this template to help me center it. I'm going to use that template to determine how to position my pieces. I have printouts of all the pieces I'm going to use in this hoop. Let's start with the largest one and work towards the smallest one. When I position this grid on this piece, I see that it will just fit in this hoop. There's a large square in the quilt that I'm making too, and that will also fit in the hoop. There are 4 small squares. They will fit in the hoop twice. So I'm going to reposition them once they're on the screen of the embroidery machine so that I can get 2 pieces out of the same hooping. The wash away sticky adds extra expense and steps, so I use regular sticky. This is how I do it. Right now my machine has my design centered, but I want to move it down to the lower portion of the hoop so I can get 2 different squares on the same piece of sticky. So I'm just going to move that down to the bottom. Then I'm going to, this is a personal idiosyncrasy, I move the position of my needle to the first stitch and bring up my bobbin thread. I don't like my bobbin thread swimming around on the bottom when I'm embroidering. Now I'm going to embroider a large temporary basting stitch. I'm going to move my hoop forward so you can see what I do next. I'm going to cut a line on the inside of the border I just stitched, approximately 1/4 of an inch away but towards the inside. And that's going to leave a window opening that's going to be big enough to allow the embroidery to sit in there without getting caught on the sticky, but the sticky will still hold it in place. Here you see the window I've created for my embroidery. I'm also going to score just outside of my basting stitches. Only through the sticky paper, not through the sticky, because I want that to remain. I want a nice border of sticky to remain, but I don't want to take all the paper away protecting my sticky, because I want to use it later on and I want to keep it as clean as possible. Before I take the paper off, I'm going to also remove my basting stitches because that'll interfere with me removing this paper. This is all set to hold my piece in place. I'm going to go back to the regular position. I'm also going to go to the 0, the beginning of my embroidery, because I'm going to stitch the basting stitch again to hold all my layers together. Since my stitches are at 0, my needle is directly above the cross mark center location marked on my back fabric. So I'm going to make sure that my back fabric is positioned in the center of that cross mark, and then I'm going to use the sticky to hold it in place temporarily by just kind of pushing down on the back so it stays in place. I'm having a little bit of trouble having my cross marks line up, so I'm going to use my jog key to simply move my piece into a more appropriate location. I'm happy with my centering, so I'm going to install the insert. My insert's plain white. Yours would probably be something more decorative, but I'm going to use the embroidery to enhance the middle of my quilt square for this project. So I want to emphasize the embroidery on both the front and the back. The next thing I do is go to the first stitch. Again, I'm going to practice pulling up that bobbin thread and begin to embroider. This first stitch is just going to base the pieces in place. So if they kind of go off or get skewed and it makes a difference, you have an opportunity to rearrange them if need be. The basting is complete, so now I've pulled up my bobbin thread and I'm going to start embroidering the decorative front of my quilt's block. This quilt block doesn't require any pad stitching, and because I'm using really pretty fabric, normally I wouldn't do that, but if I want to flip over the table topper and use both sides of it, I frequently do pad stitch smaller blocks that normally don't require any pad stitching. I do this with embroidery and clear plastic thread in the top of the machine and embroidery thread in the bobbin. When I use clear plastic thread, I use either smoke, which is what I'm going to use for this because there's a dark color, or the clear. The thread is 100% polyester, and I always use a Metallica needle for the needle when I use this method. So you can't see any of my stitches on the front. They're not interfering with the decorative insert, but when I flip over this piece, you'll see that the back decoration looks pretty nice. All of my embroidery happened in the window that I created by cutting out the stickies, so there's no washable interfacing or support material to remove. I can go ahead and install this piece right into my quilt. The embroidery is done, and so now I'm going to move to the upper part of this hoop because it's a really long hoop. I'm at the top of the hoop, so I'm going to run my basting stitch and see if I can fit another small quilt back and on top right over here. Embroidery will be inside of this area. I don't have to worry about it stitching over top of my previous work. Cut an opening on the inside of the basting stitches and remember to remove some of the sticky paper around the outside of the basting stitches to form a border. Reset the embroidery stitch count to 0 or the very beginning of your embroidery, and then position the block under the center of the needle. Position your insert and then begin embroidering. This is the one that was just stitched. I'm going to remove the lower one, revealing the window. I will use the opening that was left behind and the remaining sticky paper as it is to stitch another square.